what inspired you to found the nonprofit Integrate for Good? So where did Integrate for Good come from?
So I never set out to start a nonprofit organization. That was not my plan. I worked for once I became an occupational therapist, I worked for about 25 years in school districts here in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I had students who were kindergarten through 21 or 22 years old. If you have a disability, you can stay in school a little longer. And I started to wonder, even though it wasn't necessarily my job what happened after they graduated high school, I started to wonder, where are they going? How are they going to, I saw so much talent in them. I'm like, where are they using this? What's next for them? And when I started to follow up with these families, I realized that what they were graduating to was loneliness, isolation, unemployment, regression of skills they developed when they were in high school. And I said, someone should do something about that. That's a big problem. So I set out to find organizations that were addressing that. And there are some organizations doing some really great things. And I just felt that I didn't find anything that I thought was worthy of these students and what their next chapter should look like. So I just decided to go to Barnes and Noble. I don't know if that's still open, but I bought all kinds of books like Nonprofit Management for Dummies, The Idiot's Guide to Nonprofit Finance. I bought all these books and I started Googling everything I could. And I decided, if I wait till I learn everything I need to learn to solve this problem and to start a nonprofit, I'm probably not going to be here anymore. I'll be very well into retirement age. So I decided to just learn what I could and then just make a really calculated risk to kind of launch the plane in the air and read the manual while I'm flying. So that inspired me as just seeing a gap in, service delivery, but also this gap where almost like a cliff that these young people fall off of. And I thought, not only is that really bad for them and their families, because then if they're not in school and they can't work, you have family members that can't work. Right. So it impacts the economy. But it's also a gap for our society, because when we leave really good talent, and there's really good talent in the disability community, they experience a more than double unemployment rate as people without disabilities across the country. That gap is not only hurting the individuals impacted, it's hurting our community and our economy because we're leaving talent on the sidelines. Yeah. And that just doesn't make sense.
What are the challenges those starting nonprofits most often face, in your opinion?
I think any nonprofit leader will tell you funding, right? So as nonprofits, unless you have a social enterprise connected to what you're doing, we are exploring that, you're selling a better world, right? That's what we're selling. So funding is the challenge. So for example, this year and last year, we've experienced significant cuts in the nonprofit sector from federal funding changes. So funding, making sure your funding is diversified is so important. So, we have partnerships with corporations, with individuals. We have, private foundation grants, making sure that you're funding. And that's really for a for-profit company. If you have one client that, all your money is coming from that one client and that client relationship ends, you're in trouble as a for-profit business. So it's no different in the nonprofit sector.
What about gathering volunteers and supporters? What are the two parts of that you faced right up front?
Yeah, so volunteerism we see it trend different ways, but I think letting people know the impact they can make. Some people prefer now to be remote, in person. We're used to being behind the screen. So having people realize just what they get out of it as well when they're willing to just show up in person. There's a lot of volunteering that you can do behind the scenes at home, remotely for a nonprofit organization. You might help them write a newsletter, or something like that. A lot of our volunteers are hands-on and come in. So we're always putting that word out there, not only for people that want to maybe volunteer a couple hours, but we like people to think about developing leadership skills and their own networks by maybe joining a committee of a nonprofit organization. So, for example, we have a student here at Ursinus College. He's majoring in finance. And I said, it would be great for you to join our finance committee run by a retired CFO, run by, big financial executives in our area. They can be incredible mentors to you. So you're going to be learning things that would relate to what you're understanding and learning in the classroom, but you see a real world and how does that show up in a business?
Right. Where should people focus? Where should people try to identify skills that would be super important to apply in this role of a nonprofit leader in the future?
That's so important to think about because very few people actually major in nonprofit management. But nonprofits, being the businesses that we are, require the talent and the contributions and the knowledge and expertise of people in almost every other industry. So we're always looking for people that have a finance background, that might be going to law school. Lots of need for marketing, for storytelling. That's huge. So people that understand how to get messaging out, whether that's through social media, email campaigns, SEO, all those different things, or how can we let people know who we are, how we can benefit the people that need our services, but how we can benefit people that come on to lead with us. Basic communication skills, writing skills. We leverage AI here. So, being able to be a good prompter, of AI, event planning, fundraising. And then it's very important for nonprofits because, as a founder of a nonprofit, I created something I don't own, which is very unique from the for-profit sector. So when you create a nonprofit organization, there's no exit strategy, right? I don't own it. I can't sell it. I can't pass it on to my children. The public owns nonprofit organizations. So it's so important when we use public funds and donations from people to be able to show them the impact they make.
What is the future that you have planned for Integrate for Good?
So definitely more belonging in our community, more inclusion, more equity, more opportunities for people with disabilities to be on trajectories toward the futures they deserve. But then also we see the future of Integrate for Good. We see a real responsibility to make it possible that people with disabilities shouldn't be the ones expected to be doing the changing and the fitting in. We always say fitting in is the opposite of belonging because you're not showing up as your full self. If you have to fit into systems that weren't designed for you, you're not belonging, right? You're changing who you are. So we want people to show up as their whole selves, as their full selves. We don't believe people with disabilities are broken or needing to be fixed. They're deserving of opportunities where they don't have to worry if there's a curb cut in the sidewalk or a place if you're neurodivergent that you can sit in a doctor's office waiting room and not be completely overwhelmed with what's going on there. So just creating a world where other people can show up as they are because that strengthens all of us. We're also thinking about a social enterprise model where we would create a revenue generating business that would be under our nonprofit umbrella where we could really develop workforce readiness for people with and without disabilities that would feed our mission and elevate it. So that's where we're just starting to talk to people and figure out who our partners would be. And if we do that right here on Main Street in Collegeville or if we do that somewhere else. But it's very exciting to start to think about, after our loss of federal funding, how do we not just bounce back, but bounce forward?
Yeah. I wanted to thank you for your time today. Thank you for giving us these insights.
Thank you for this opportunity. I always like to make myself available for students. I just had a student reach out yesterday. Whenever I speak, I always share my email address and I let students know if they're ever just thinking, if they have a question, if something sparked their, they want to talk more about something. I love when students reach out to me. Email's the best way to do that. Bev, really easy, Bev at integrateforgood.org. And I love being a resource. I love being in the middle of having mentors and mentoring other people. So I'm always looking for other people that, I always learn from the people I mentor as well. So if anyone's interested, I'm always happy to be a resource if people are thinking through things.